The silent planet. The stars stretched across the dark sky, far beyond the reach of most explorers, but Jack had always been drawn to the unknown. His ship, the Valiant, glided silently through space, its engines humming softly. Jack sat at the controls, staring at the empty space ahead. He had heard rumors, whispers in the galactic circles about a forgotten planet, one abandoned by an ancient alien race. No one knew exactly why the planet was left behind, but that was what made it so intriguing. It was a mystery, and Jack loved mysteries. For days, his ship had sailed through the void, using every bit of technology he could to track down the coordinates. Now, as he finally approached the coordinates, the planet came into view. The strange world appeared in the distance, its surface mostly dark and cracked, with huge canyons and large, abandoned cities scattered across the surface. Jack could feel a sense of awe and unease rise in him. It was a place that felt different, quiet, almost too quiet. It wasn't the bustling, active world that many planets were, full of life and activity. No, this place seemed frozen in time, a forgotten corner of the galaxy where no one dared to go. He guided the ship toward the planet's surface, his eyes scanning the control panel. The planet's atmosphere was strange, barely breathable for humans. Jack had to make sure his suit was airtight and that his ship's systems could handle the thin air. With his pulse quickening, he landed the ship in one of the large, empty fields near a ruined city. The engines whined as the ship touched down softly on the surface. He opened the hatch and stepped out, his boots making a soft crunch as they hit the cracked ground. The air smelled stale and ancient. It was cold, and Jack could feel the weight of the silence pressing in on him. The wind was almost non-existent, and the sky overhead was a dull shade of gray. There were no animals, no signs of life. It was as if everything that had once lived here had simply disappeared. Jack adjusted his helmet and set off toward the ruins of the nearest city. The structures looked like they had been built by a highly advanced civilization, with tall towers and massive archways. But there was no life here, only dust and decay. His boots echoed on the empty streets as he walked deeper into the city, looking for any sign of what had happened. The buildings had strange symbols on them, markings Jack couldn't understand. They seemed familiar, but they didn't belong to any known alien language. As he walked further, he began to notice something even stranger. The air seemed to hum with a faint energy, like something was alive beneath the surface, just out of reach. He couldn't explain it, but there was something about this place that felt waiting for something. He found his way to the central plaza of the city, where the largest structure stood. It was a massive triangular building with smooth metallic surfaces that reflected the faint light coming from the distant stars. It had the same mysterious symbols etched into the sides, and there was something about it that made Jack uneasy. As he approached, a soft hum began to resonate through the ground. It was so faint at first that Jack thought it was just his imagination. But then the humming grew louder, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to vibrate ever so slightly. He stopped, listening carefully. Was it the planet itself? Or was it something else, something hidden deep beneath the surface? Jack's heart raced. He took a few cautious steps forward and placed his hand on the surface of the building. The metal felt warm, almost alive. He could feel something pulsing underneath, like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. The hum continued, and Jack's curiosity drove him further. He activated his helmet's scanner, trying to get a read on what was beneath the structure. The scanner beeped softly, but it didn't provide much information. It was like the building itself was blocking all signals, keeping its secrets hidden. His mind raced. What had happened here? Why had this planet been abandoned? And who, or what, had left it in such a state? Jack knew that the answers weren't going to come easily. He had always been a problem solver, a man who could figure things out, no matter how complicated. But this place was different. There were no easy answers here. As the hum grew louder, Jack felt a strange pull toward the structure. It was as if the planet itself was calling to him, urging him to go deeper, to uncover the truth. He had no idea what he would find, but he knew one thing for sure: whatever lay ahead would change everything. There was no turning back now. Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward, entering the dark doorway of the building. As soon as he passed through, the light from the outside world faded, and he found himself in a vast, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with strange alien technology, shiny, smooth surfaces that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. There were no windows, no doors. The only source of light came from the glowing symbols on the walls. They seemed to guide him, drawing him deeper into the heart of the building. He moved slowly, his every step echoing in the vast silence. The air inside was thick, heavy with something Jack couldn't name. He felt a chill run down his spine, and his instincts told him that he wasn't alone. He glanced around, but there was no one there. Only the shadows and the strange alien artifacts that filled the room. Yet that feeling of being watched grew stronger, like a presence just beyond his vision. Then he saw it. At the far end of the chamber, a large pedestal stood in the center of the room. On it rested an object, a glowing artifact, pulsing with the same eerie energy that seemed to fill the entire planet. It was beautiful, but it was also terrifying. Jack could feel the power emanating from it, a power that was older than anything he had ever encountered. This was what had been left behind. This was what the aliens had abandoned. But why? As Jack stepped closer, the object's glow grew brighter, and the humming intensified. He knew, without a doubt, that whatever this object was, it held the key to the planet's secrets, and he was about to uncover them. But he had no idea that by touching it, he would set into motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The first rebuild. Jack stared at the glowing artifact, its pulsating light casting eerie shadows across the chamber. As he approached, his heart raced. He knew that whatever this object was, it had a significance far beyond anything he had ever encountered. The energy it radiated was unlike anything Jack had felt before. Ancient, powerful, and almost sentient, like it was alive and aware of his presence. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling slightly as he brushed his fingers against the surface of the artifact. The moment he made contact, a sharp surge of energy shot through his body. His vision blurred, and the ground beneath him seemed to shift. The air thickened, and for a brief moment, Jack felt as though the entire planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sensation stopped. Jack staggered back, taking deep, shaky breaths. He felt a strange sense of power flowing through him, but also a deep sense of unease. He glanced down at his hand, which still tingled with the energy of the artifact. The chamber around him seemed to hum louder, and he could feel the planet itself reacting to his touch. Shaking off the sensation, Jack turned his attention back to the artifact. He realized that it wasn't just a relic of an ancient race. It was a key to something much larger, something hidden beneath the planet's surface. The artifact had activated a series of systems that had been dormant for centuries, perhaps millennia. The planet was beginning to wake up. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Jack pulled out his tools and began to carefully examine the artifact. He had always been a skilled engineer, able to repair and rebuild anything with his hands, but this was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The alien technology embedded within the artifact was unlike anything known to humanity. As he worked, Jack noticed that the hum of the planet seemed to grow stronger. It wasn't just in the chamber anymore, it was everywhere. It resonated through the walls, through the ground, through the air itself. It was as if the entire planet was alive, and it was responding to his actions. Hours passed as Jack carefully studied the artifact and the surrounding systems. Finally, he managed to connect his equipment to the artifact's power source. The lights on his scanner flickered to life, revealing a network of ancient machinery buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Jack's pulse quickened as he realized the magnitude of what he had uncovered. This was no ordinary planet. It was a forgotten outpost, an ancient stronghold, built and abandoned by an alien race long before humanity had even begun to explore the stars. The systems he had reactivated were part of a vast intergalactic network that spanned across the galaxy. The technology was far beyond anything Jack had ever seen, and he knew it had the potential to change everything. The implications were enormous. If Jack could fully understand and harness this technology, it could propel humanity into an entirely new era. But there was a danger in that too. Jack could feel it. Something dark and ancient that had been locked away for a reason. The alien race that had once inhabited this planet had fled, abandoning it for reasons they never shared. What had they been running from? With a sense of growing urgency, Jack decided to push forward. He was determined to rebuild the planet, to unlock its secrets and make use of the technology he had discovered. This could be the key to humanity's rise, a new age of exploration and power. As days passed, Jack worked tirelessly, activating more and more systems buried beneath the planet's surface. The cities, once lifeless and desolate, began to hum with energy again. The machines Jack activated started to rebuild the ruined structures, repairing the broken walls, and reinforcing the foundations of the ancient buildings. Slowly but surely, the planet was coming back to life. Jack had made remarkable progress. The planet was no longer a silent graveyard. It was becoming something new. The alien architecture was blending with Jack's own designs, and the technology was adapting to human needs. The energy systems he activated powered up, lighting up the once dark streets of the ancient city. Jack had set the foundations for a thriving new world. However, as Jack worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Sometimes, when he was deep in the ruins, he would hear a faint sound, like the rustling of leaves in a forgotten corner of the planet. Other times, he felt eyes watching him from the shadows. His instincts told him that someone, was lurking, waiting. The planet's eerie silence was no longer reassuring. It felt more like a warning. Despite his unease, Jack pressed on. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The alien technology was too valuable, the potential too great. He had to finish what he had started. But as Jack continued to rebuild, he noticed something else. Strange energy readings started to appear on his scanners. They were faint at first, nothing more than flickers of interference. But over time, they grew stronger, more distinct. They were coming from deep beneath the planet's surface, from a place Jack had not yet explored. The energy spikes were coming from an area that seemed to be locked away, hidden from the rest of the planet. Jack's curiosity was piqued, and he decided that he had to investigate. He began to prepare his equipment for a deeper exploration of the planet's underground systems. There was something down there, something important. He just had to find out what it was. As Jack descended into the dark tunnels beneath the surface, the air grew colder. The hum of the planet was louder here, vibrating through the walls. The further Jack went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It felt as though the planet itself was resisting his presence, warning him to stay away. Finally, Jack arrived at a massive underground chamber. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the darkness. In the center of the room, there was a massive dormant machine. It was ancient, yet it still pulsed with a faint energy, as though it was waiting to be reawakened. Jack stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the heart of the planet, the source of the energy that had been calling to him. But as he approached, the air around him seemed to grow heavier, the hum of the planet intensifying. And then, just as Jack was about to touch the machine, he heard something that made his blood run cold, a soft, distant sound echoing through the chamber. A voice. It was calling to him, the unexpected visitors. The voice that echoed through the chamber was faint, but unmistakable. It was not a human voice. No, this was something ancient, alien, and almost malevolent. Jack froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced around the chamber, searching for the source of the sound. His mind raced, wondering if it was just his imagination, a trick of the planet's eerie atmosphere. But no, the voice was real. It resonated through the chamber, deep and guttural, like an ancient echo of something long forgotten. Jack could hear the words, but they were not in any language he recognized. Still, there was something about the cadence, the rhythm of the voice, that felt familiar, as if it were trying to communicate with him in a way that transcended words. He swallowed hard, stepping back cautiously. The machine at the center of the room pulsed faintly, its lights flickering as though it were waking up. The voice grew louder, and now Jack could hear it more clearly. It was a warning to leave. Jack's instincts screamed at him to turn back, to leave the planet before things got worse. But curiosity, the need to uncover the mysteries of the universe, kept him rooted to the spot. He had come so far. He couldn't turn back now. Suddenly, the hum of the planet grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath him. The walls of the chamber seemed to tremble, as if the planet itself was responding to the voice. And then, before Jack could react, the ground shook violently. A loud rumbling sound filled the air, and the lights in the chamber flickered. The entire structure seemed to be shifting, groaning under some immense pressure. Jack stumbled, barely keeping his balance, as a deep rumble echoed from below. His eyes widened in shock as he noticed something. Movement. The walls of the chamber were shifting, revealing hidden doors that had been sealed for centuries. These doors had once been used to protect the planet's most important secrets. But now, they were opening. Slowly, steadily. The rumbling intensified as something large and metallic rose from beneath the chamber. It was a ship, a massive alien vessel, hidden away for centuries, now awakening in response to the disturbance Jack had caused. The ship's surface gleamed, its hull covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. This wasn't just any ship. This was a warship, a relic from the alien civilization that had once inhabited this planet. Jack's heart raced. He knew that the discovery of this ship could change everything. It was a key to understanding the true history of the planet, and perhaps the fate of the alien race that had abandoned it. But there was something deeply unsettling about it, too. The ship was ancient, and the energy it emitted felt wrong. It felt like it was alive, like it had a mind of its own. Before Jack could fully process what he was seeing, the ground beneath his feet shook again, more violently this time. The rumbling was deafening now, and Jack was forced to brace himself against the walls to stay upright. The ship was rising faster, as if it had been waiting for this moment, waiting for Jack to unlock the hidden systems. In the distance, he could hear the sound of engines firing to life, low and menacing, like the growl of a beast awakening from a long slumber. Jack's breath quickened as he realized what was happening. The planet wasn't just a dead world waiting to be rediscovered. It was a weapon, a fortress built to house an ancient fleet. The aliens had abandoned this place not just to escape from something, but because they had feared what it could unleash. They had sealed the planet away, hoping no one would ever uncover it. And now Jack had unknowingly triggered its reawakening. The ship's engines roared to life, and Jack felt a rush of air as a massive door opened above him, revealing the dark sky of the planet. The ship was preparing to launch. He stumbled back, his mind racing. What had he done? He had uncovered something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. The aliens who had left this planet had done so for a reason. They had abandoned it because they knew that something terrible was hidden here, something that could destroy civilizations. Before Jack could process his next move, a new sound filled the air, one that made his blood run cold. The sound of engines. But these weren't the engines of the ship he had just awakened. These were different. He turned quickly, his heart leaping into his throat. He saw them, a fleet of ships, sleek and alien in design, appearing out of nowhere. They moved silently through the atmosphere, descending toward the planet's surface. There were dozens of them. their hulls shimmering under the faint light of the distant stars. They weren't human ships. Jack didn't need to look at them for long to know who they were. They were the ones who had abandoned the planet, an ancient alien race returning to reclaim what was theirs. Jack's mind raced. What did they want? Why had they come back now, after all these years? Had they been watching him? Had they known from the moment he landed here that he would awaken the weapon? His pulse quickened as he realized the truth. He wasn't alone on this planet anymore. The aliens had returned, and they weren't happy about what he had done. A voice crackled over his communicator, cutting through the deafening roar of the ships above. It was a voice he didn't recognize. Cold, harsh, and unmistakably alien. Human, the voice growled. You have disturbed what was meant to stay hidden. You will pay for your actions. Jack's breath caught in his throat. The aliens had returned, and they were angry. The fleet above him began to descend, preparing for something. Jack had no idea what they were planning, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about a planet. It was about survival. And now, Jack had to make a choice: run or fight. The reckoning. Jack's heart pounded as the alien fleet loomed overhead, their ships now descending with terrifying precision. He could feel the pressure building, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. The voice over his communicator, harsh and demanding, still echoed in his mind. You will pay for your actions. He glanced around the chamber. The ancient warship had fully emerged from the ground, its metallic surface gleaming under the dim light. It wasn't just a relic, it was a weapon. Its engines thrummed with power, and Jack could feel the heat radiating from its hull. The sheer scale of the ship was staggering, and its presence sent a chill down his spine. But the aliens, the ones who had abandoned this planet long ago, were back now, and they weren't interested in history. They wanted control. The first of their ships landed with a deafening thud, its landing gear digging into the surface of the planet. From the darkened hull, figures began to emerge, tall, shadowy figures that moved with unnerving precision. The aliens who had once ruled this planet were back, and they weren't alone. Jack had read about them in old texts. The Tar-Rin, an ancient alien race known for their advanced technology and ruthless ways. They were a species of conquerors, and their empire had once stretched across the galaxy. But something had happened. Jack didn't know what, but the Tar-Rin had vanished. They had left the planet behind, sealing it away, locking their most dangerous weapons inside. And now, they had returned. The air around Jack grew colder, the silence of the planet pressing in on him like a vice. He could hear the heavy footsteps of the Tar-Rin as they moved toward him. There were no words, no negotiation, only cold, silent resolve. In a flash, Jack snapped into action. The aliens weren't here to talk. They were here to reclaim what had been lost. They'd clearly been watching his every move. His interference had awoken something they wanted to stay buried. And now, it was up to him to survive. He sprinted toward the warship, the only hope of survival he had left. The ship's systems had already been activated, and the ancient technology hummed in response to his presence. It wasn't just a ship, it was a fortress, a weapon designed to protect this world from intruders. But Jack wasn't sure if it was on his side, or if it would turn against him, just like everything else on this cursed planet. Behind him, the Tar-Rin advanced, their alien armor reflecting the faint light as they moved in unison. They were efficient, methodical, too much so. Jack could feel the tension in the air, the weight of their presence closing in. He had to think fast. The communicator on his wrist crackled again, and the voice from before spoke once more. Human, you are out of your depth. You cannot escape what you have awakened. Jack's pulse quickened. He was running out of time. The warship's hatch opened with a hiss, and Jack dove inside. The interior was vast, filled with corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Lights flickered on as he sprinted down the narrow passageways, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the metal walls. The ship was ancient, but its systems were still functional, still alive. The more Jack interacted with them, the more he felt a connection to the machine. It wasn't just technology, it was sentient. Somehow, it understood his presence. But as Jack pushed deeper into the ship, he heard something that made his blood run cold. The sounds of the Tauran following him. They were closing in, their heavy steps reverberating off the walls. They were relentless, and Jack knew they wouldn't stop until they had him. Then, a voice spoke directly into Jack's mind. A low, powerful voice, different from the cold one he had heard earlier. This voice felt different, warm, almost comforting. "Human, you are not alone." Jack stopped dead in his tracks. He blinked, disoriented, unsure if he was hearing things. The voice continued, its tone gentle but urgent. "I am the guardian of this vessel. I can help you." Jack's heart skipped a beat. Was this the ship talking to him? Was it alive? The more he thought about it, the more he realized that it must be. This was no ordinary ship. It was a living, breathing entity, and it had been waiting for someone to awaken it. The Tauran's footsteps grew louder, closer now. Jack didn't have time to process this revelation. He needed to act, but the Guardian's voice was still in his mind, guiding him. "You must activate the central core. It is the heart of this vessel. I will provide you with the power you need, but you must hurry." Jack didn't hesitate. He followed the voice's instructions, racing through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, the Tauran hot on his heels. The ship seemed to come alive as he moved, responding to his every step. Lights flickered on, doors opened at his command, and he could feel the pulse of the Guardian guiding him forward. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jack reached the central chamber. The room was enormous, filled with glowing consoles and alien technology that hummed with an unsettling energy. At the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure, pulsing with light. The Guardian's voice spoke again, this time with urgency. "You must connect to the core. Use the interface." Jack wasted no time. He sprinted to the central console, his hands flying over the controls as he activated the ship's systems. The room trembled, and the hum of the ship intensified. It was as if the ship itself was waking from a long slumber, its dormant power beginning to surge back to life. But just as Jack thought he was safe, the Tauran burst into the room. Their cold, emotionless eyes locked onto Jack, and they raised their weapons. It was over. They had him cornered. But just as they were about to strike, the entire ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and a deep, resonant sound filled the chamber. The Guardian's voice echoed through the room, louder than ever. "You have awoken me, human. Now we will fight together." In an instant, the ship's systems activated. Weapons powered up, energy shields surged into place, and the room was flooded with a blinding light. The Tauran were thrown back by the force of the energy, their weapons useless against the ship's defenses. Jack stood there, stunned, as the Guardian's power surged around him. The ship was now fully awake, and it was protecting him. The Tauran were no match for it. But Jack knew this was just the beginning. He had awakened something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The unseen enemy. The battle had only just begun. Jack stood in the heart of the ship, his breath ragged as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. The Tauran were momentarily thrown back, their weapons useless against the overwhelming force of the ship's power. The room was now a battlefield, a place where human ingenuity and ancient alien technology collided in a way Jack had never imagined possible. But even as the Tauran staggered, their bodies shifting with the glow of their alien armor, Jack knew this was far from over. The ship was now awake, but the real question was, whose side was it on? Was it truly there to protect him, or was it merely following its own directives, with no regard for human life? He glanced around, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. The Tauran were regrouping, their discipline unmatched as they quickly regained their footing. They would not be thrown off so easily. "You should not have awakened the Guardian." The voice over his communicator crackled. It was the same voice that had warned him earlier, cold and unforgiving. The ship is not here to help you. You are just another pawn in a game far bigger than you. The words sent a chill down Jack's spine. What did the Tauren know about the ship? What was its true purpose? Before he could react, the Tauren began moving again, their weapons powered up and ready. They didn't hesitate. They attacked with precision, laser beams flashing across the room, ricocheting off the ship's energy shields. The ship responded automatically, releasing a burst of energy that sent the Tauren crashing backward once more. Jack didn't wait. He bolted towards the ship's control panel, his fingers flying over the alien console, trying to find a way to access the ship's systems. The Guardian's voice guided him through the interface. Human, you must understand. The ship is not your ally. It was created to keep the Tauren and their enemies at bay. It is a weapon of war, not peace. Jack's mind raced. If the ship wasn't here to help him, then what was its true purpose? Had it really been waiting for someone to awaken it, or had it been designed for something far darker? The more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he knew about the ship, the Tauren, and the planet itself. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shift in the air. Something was wrong. The lights flickered, and the ground beneath him trembled. Jack barely had time to react before the ceiling above him split open, revealing a massive hole that led into the depths of the planet's core. The rumbling grew louder, more intense, and he could feel the ship shaking as though it were alive, reacting to something deep within the planet. You have awakened the sleeping force. The Guardian's voice spoke again, this time with urgency. The ship is reacting to the disturbance. You have no idea what you have triggered. Jack's heart raced. What was the ship reacting to? What kind of power was buried within the planet? Before he could make sense of it, the walls began to shift, and Jack saw something that made his blood run cold. More Tauren ships, dozens of them, emerging from hidden underground tunnels. The alien fleet was far larger than he had anticipated. The ships were sleek, heavily armed, and ready for war. Jack had thought he was just dealing with a few enemies. But now, it was clear. The Tauren had known this planet's secrets for far longer than he had realized. The alien ships began to rise into the air, their engines roaring to life. The sky above the planet darkened, filled with a fleet that stretched as far as Jack could see. The Tauren were no longer playing around. They were preparing for something big. The ground continued to shake, and the ship beneath Jack's feet trembled violently. The entire planet seemed to be waking up, as if it were responding to the threat of the alien fleet. The ship was no longer just a protector, it was part of something far bigger. The true force of the planet's power was being activated, and Jack had no idea what he had unleashed. You have awakened the planet's true purpose, the Guardian's voice said again, its tone tinged with regret. This world was designed as a weapon, a tool of mass destruction. You have called upon forces that were never meant to be used. Jack felt his stomach twist. The planet wasn't just a weapon, it was a catalyst, a doomsday device capable of wiping out entire fleets. The Tauren hadn't just abandoned it, they had locked it away, hidden it from the universe, because they knew the consequences of unleashing its full power. And now Jack had made the ultimate mistake. The air was thick with tension. The alien fleet had begun to move toward the planet's surface, preparing for an invasion. Jack could see them through the ship's windows, hundreds of ships, each one brimming with weaponry and alien soldiers. The ship beneath Jack's feet hummed with energy, and the walls around him glowed with a fierce light. The weaponry that had been dormant for centuries was now coming online. There is still time to stop this, the Guardian said, its voice now softer, almost pleading. But you must act quickly. The weapon has already been activated. If you do not stop it now, everything will be lost. Jack's mind raced. He could feel the pressure mounting. The Tauren were on their way, and the ship was readying itself for something unimaginable. He had to make a choice: take control of the ship and try to stop the weapon, or risk everything and escape before it was too late. As the alien fleet closed in, Jack realized that the fate of the galaxy was now in his hands. He had no idea what would happen next, but he couldn't stand by and let this planet, this weapon, fall into the wrong hands. With a deep breath, Jack made his decision. "I will stop this," he whispered to himself. And with that, he turned to face the heart of the ship. The countdown had begun. The last stand. Jack's pulse raced as the countdown echoed through the ship's corridors. The cold, mechanical voice of the ship's systems counted down from 30. He didn't have much time. His hands trembled as he tried to decipher the alien interface in front of him, his mind racing to process the information. The ship had told him that he had awakened something terrible, something that could destroy entire worlds. And now, the fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. The Taran fleet was descending rapidly, their ships piercing the atmosphere, their weapons powered up and ready. The air around Jack felt thick with tension. The ship's core was about to reach full power, and the weapon hidden within this world would soon be unleashed. If he didn't stop it, the universe would know the true horror of the planet's destructive capabilities. "You must act now, human," the Guardian's voice urged, its tone more desperate than ever. "The weapon is in your hands. Only you can stop it." Jack didn't respond. He couldn't afford to waste a second. The Guardian was right. He was the only one who could prevent the destruction that was about to unfold. His mind flashed back to everything he had learned about the Taran, the ship, and the planet's secrets. He understood now. The Taran had left this place for a reason. The weapon they had sealed away was too dangerous, too powerful to be used. And now, the ship was preparing to awaken it again. He ran down the hallway toward the central core, his footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The ship's lights flickered, the power surging as the countdown reached 10. He could feel the energy building in the walls, the intensity of the weapon's power almost suffocating. He had to get to the core and shut it down. Now, as Jack approached the central chamber, the door slid open with a hiss. He stepped inside, his breath catching in his throat at the sight before him. The core of the ship was a massive structure, its surface glowing with an intense, otherworldly energy. The weapon was housed within, its power ready to be unleashed upon the galaxy. "This is your last chance, human," the Guardian's voice urged again. But Jack didn't need to be told twice. He reached for the control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface, desperately searching for a way to deactivate the core. But before he could reach the final command, the ship trembled violently. The ground beneath him shook, and he heard the unmistakable sound of alien footsteps. The Taran had arrived. He spun around, his heart racing. The door to the chamber slid open, and the Taran soldiers filed in, their weapons raised and ready to strike. There were dozens of them, all with their cold, emotionless eyes fixed on him. They had come to take the planet back, no matter the cost. Jack had no choice. He couldn't let them activate the weapon. He lunged for the control panel again, his mind racing. The Taran were closing in, their weapons trained on him. He could feel the weight of the moment. The entire galaxy hung in the balance. He couldn't fail now. As he reached the panel, the Taran fired their weapons, but Jack was already moving. He dove behind a nearby pillar for cover, the blasts of energy narrowly missing him. He could feel the heat of the shots searing the air, but he couldn't stop now. The countdown was almost at 0. "You will not stop us, human," one of the Taran soldiers growled. His voice was low, menacing. "You have no idea what you've awakened." Jack didn't answer. Instead, he tapped into the core's interface once more, his hands moving faster than ever. The ship's systems responded. Grudgingly, it seemed, as though it were fighting him every step of the way. But Jack didn't back down. He had no choice. Suddenly, a surge of energy shot through the room, and Jack was thrown to the floor. The Taran staggered, momentarily distracted by the flash of light. Jack scrambled to his feet, sweat beading on his forehead. The core was nearly activated. He had only seconds left. With a final, desperate push, Jack slammed his hand onto the panel, overriding the system. A loud, mechanical groan filled the air as the power to the weapon began to shut down. The countdown stopped. The room fell silent, save for the sound of the Tar-Rin soldiers growling in frustration. But Jack wasn't done yet. The Tar-Rin were still there, and they wouldn't let him leave so easily. He turned, seeing the soldiers advancing toward him, their weapons raised. There was no escape. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't hesitate. He activated the ship's defensive systems, hoping against hope that the ancient technology would protect him. A sudden burst of energy erupted from the walls, sending the Tar-Rin soldiers flying backward. Their weapons fizzled out, their armor rattling as they crashed to the ground. The ship had responded to Jack's commands, defending him from the alien attackers. But it wasn't over. Jack could see more Tar-Rin ships landing outside, their massive forms descending onto the surface. The battle for the planet was far from finished. The Tar-Rin weren't about to give up without a fight. Jack rushed to the ship's control console, pulling up the tactical map of the planet. The Tar-Rin fleet was massive, and reinforcements were arriving by the minute. The battle had only just begun. "You have done well, human," the Guardian's voice spoke, its tone more solemn than before. "But your actions have only set the stage for a greater war. The Tar-Rin will not stop. They will come for you." Jack's mind raced. He had deactivated the weapon, but the Tar-Rin were still here, still determined to take the planet back. His victory was temporary, there was no denying that. But it had bought him time. Time to plan. Time to prepare for what was coming next. "I will not let them win," Jack said to himself, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. The Tar-Rin were here to reclaim their weapon, but Jack wasn't about to let them. Not without a fight. The final reckoning. The chaos surrounding Jack seemed to intensify with every passing moment. The ship hummed beneath his feet, its powerful engines whirring to life, but the alien fleet was too close. The Tar-Rin had regrouped outside, and now they were sending wave after wave of soldiers to storm the planet's surface. Jack could feel the pressure mounting, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. The weapon had been deactivated, but it was only a temporary victory. The Tar-Rin were determined to retake the planet, and Jack knew they would stop at nothing to reclaim the weapon that had once been their greatest tool of destruction. But now it was in his hands, and he wouldn't let them take it. Not without a fight. The Guardian's voice echoed in his mind, calm yet urgent. "Human, you have done well, but your battle is far from over. The Tar-Rin will not let this go. You must prepare for the final confrontation. There is no turning back now." Jack didn't need to be told twice. He could see the Tar-Rin ships descending in the distance, their sleek forms cutting through the sky. They were coming for him, but he was ready. He had one advantage the Tar-Rin didn't: knowledge of the ship. He had learned its systems, its weapons, and its defenses. Now it was time to use that knowledge to his advantage. He ran down the corridors of the ship, his heart pounding as he prepared for the ultimate battle. The Tar-Rin had taken so much from humanity. Now it was time to show them that they had underestimated the resolve of a single human being. He had no intention of giving up the planet. Not without a fight. Jack arrived at the ship's command center, his eyes scanning the glowing control panels. He could feel the weight of the moment. The fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders, and he knew the Tar-Rin weren't going to back down easily. But he couldn't let them have what they wanted. Not after everything that had happened. He had come too far to fail now. He activated the ship's main weapon systems, his fingers flying over the controls. The massive energy cannons lining the ship's exterior powered up, their enormous barrels glowing with deadly intent. Jack didn't hesitate. He fired, the ship's guns erupting with a blinding flash of energy. The Tar-Rin fleet, already closing in, was caught off guard. The first few ships were destroyed in a matter of seconds, their hulls splitting apart under the sheer force of the blast. But the Tararin were not easily defeated. They retaliated with equal ferocity, launching their own barrage of weapons at the ship. Jack braced himself as the ship rocked under the impact of the enemy fire. The shields held for now, but the strain was evident. The Tararin had more ships than he could handle, and their firepower was unmatched. "You cannot win, human," the voice of the Tararin commander crackled over the comms. "You are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender now, and we will spare your life. Keep resisting, and you will die along with your pathetic planet." Jack's grip tightened on the controls. He wasn't about to surrender. Not now. Not ever. The Tararin had underestimated humanity before, and he was going to make sure they didn't do it again. The ship trembled again as another round of enemy fire slammed into its shields. The energy was fading fast, but Jack wasn't about to let the ship fall. With one final decisive action, he activated the self-destruct sequence for the planet's core. He wasn't going to let the Tararin take the weapon, and he wasn't going to let them have the planet either. "Human, what are you doing?" The Guardian's voice rang out in alarm. "If you destroy the core, you will kill everything. The Tararin, the humans, the entire galaxy will burn." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The risk was enormous. But if he didn't act now, there would be no chance of stopping the Tararin. He had to make a choice. Sacrifice everything to ensure the galaxy's survival, or let the Tararin have their way. He glanced at the controls. The countdown was already in motion. He had seconds, not minutes, but even as he hesitated, he knew the answer. The galaxy had to be protected, no matter the cost. The Tararin would not be allowed to use this weapon to rain terror over the universe, not on his watch. "I'll do what I must," Jack whispered to himself. He pressed the final button. The entire planet seemed to shake as the core erupted with energy. The ship's alarms blared, warning him of the imminent destruction. The Tararin fleet was too close. Their ships had already broken through the ship's outer defenses, and they were preparing to board. But it was too late for them. As the countdown hit 0, a massive wave of energy erupted from the planet's core, sending a shockwave through the surrounding space. The Tararin ships closest to the planet disintegrated in an instant. The planet itself began to crumble, its surface breaking apart under the pressure of the blast. But Jack didn't flinch. He had made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the galaxy's safety. The ship began to lose power as the core collapsed, the energy that had once protected it now gone. Jack knew he didn't have much time. The last of the Tararin ships were retreating, their forces broken by the destruction. The battle had been won. The weapon had been deactivated, the galaxy saved. But Jack was alone. The ship's hull began to crack, and the lights flickered one final time. Jack took a deep breath as the cold of space crept in around him. He had done everything he could. He had fought for survival, for humanity, and for the future of the galaxy. As the ship spiraled into the darkness of space, Jack closed his eyes, ready to face whatever came next.